Hello and welcome to this video. My name's Beckham. The subject here is Photoshop techniques. We're going to be looking at creating a fairly simple selection, and we're going to be using copy and paste. The technique I'm going to demonstrate, I've demonstrated before. I'm going to use an image that I've used before, so forgive me if you've already seen this. But the technique is one of those that I refer to as being able to be taken to the bank. What I mean is, it's a technique we can use again and again and again on a multitude of different images. It's simple, yet it works. So here we can see a problem with this image that I've had lots of times. So if I've had them, then I'm guessing so have you. A big bright highlight up at the top right that in this case is spoiling the image. So what can we do about it? Well, this is what I mean about a technique which we can use over and over again. I couldn't change where I was, my location, to get rid of that highlight. I wasn't able to ask my subject to kindly move a little bit to the left. So what we need to do here is to find a simple technique to patch this up, and a patch is exactly what we're going to do. So the patch we need to make with this image is no different than if we was trying to patch a hole in the knee of our jeans. We'd try to locate a piece of denim larger than the hole, and we would stitch it into place. Well, that's exactly what we need to do here. So to cover up that large white area top right, I need some pixels which are very similar. Well, we have them on the left hand side of the image. So if I copy them and then paste them back and flip them over, we're going to be well on our way to a pretty good repair. So we need to start by picking up our freehand lasso tool from the toolbox. Once we've selected the lasso tool, we need to select the pixels for our patch. I'm going to draw a quick and simple selection down the lion's face and around, across, up and back. There's a selection that I've made. What I need to do is to soften this edge so that when I copy it and flip it over, it matches much better on the right hand side. I can do that using select and mask from the top of the screen. We can view this in a number of different ways, but I'm just going to stay with the standard black and white. These are just different ways we can view what we're about to do next. The important thing here is that we're going to feather the edge of the selection. Now you can see the edge, and that's why I like black and white. If I step this up quite a lot, there you can see the softness we're about to put into the cut we're about to make. So we're making our patch very soft at the edges. There's no rights and wrongs here, and if we get it wrong, so what? All we've got to do is have another go. But once we are happy with that feather, go down to the bottom of this panel and click OK. Now it's a simple matter of copying that patch to a new layer, but Photoshop does all that for us. We can just hit Ctrl J, one of the most effective and simplest keyboard shortcuts we have. Look over on the right hand side as I hit Ctrl J, and you'll see the patch is created on a new blank layer. What does that mean? Well, if I turn off my original image, there you can see the patch we've made for our jeans, or in our case, our lion. Now, although we see the patch in the layers on the right hand side, of course we don't see it on the picture at all because it's sitting right over the top of the area it was copied from. So the next thing we need to do is to flip over just that layer, not the lion's face itself, but just the layer that we've created. And we do that by going to the edit menu, choosing transform, and we can flip horizontal. Now we can see the patch a little more clearly. From the toolbox we need the move tool. That's the one right at the top. We can then click and move the patch around the picture. And if we take just a little bit of care, we can make a pretty effective repair. Now that looks pretty good straight away. I hope you'll agree. So all I would do here would be to merge those two layers together or flatten them together, either way. Go to the top right of the layers here and we'll choose flatten. We have one little giveaway that perhaps we've been at work here. Those two little hairs there that are similar to the ones on the other side. But we can fix them pretty easily, can't we, with just a couple of touches of the spot healing brush. Now I'm not going to do that right now because I'd like to show you another example, because when I said earlier on in the introduction that this was one of those techniques you could take to the bank, well, I'd like to demonstrate why. So let's open up another image. Well, as you can see by the spinning round of the screen, I've got another image here which is spoilt by the highlight on the left corner this time, similar to the lion. But probably the most damaging part of the image is this ugly broken twig, almost as though it's been vandalized. It would be nice if the branch could just continue along there. We could do away with this and perhaps deal with the light corner at the same time. Well, we can, using exactly the same techniques. So what we need to do is go back to our toolbox and reselect that selection tool. Now I need to cut my patch. I need some green from over here. I don't want to take too much of this highlight if I can avoid it, but I'm going to create quite a big patch, so I'm going to draw selection down here and down the edge of that branch, up and back. Once I've done that, I'm going to do much the same as I did before. Select and mask, and I'm going to soften the edge. We can tick a box on here, just down here, look, remember settings. So if we was doing a lot of work like this, when we put the amount of feather into one image and we find it works well, then when we come back in next time, we'll find the setting is there waiting for us. But that looks okay to me. Let's make it a little bit more. Click OK. There we have the patch. Now when I copy this, I can hit that Ctrl J once again. We see that appear over the top of the background image over on the right. But I need to not only flip this over, but I've got to do a bit of rotation as well. So let's give that a try. We're going to use exactly the same tool first of all by going to Edit, Transform, and we'll flip this horizontally, but you can see the problem. I'm going to pick up my Move tool and I'll move it over here. You can see where we've more or less got the patch we need, but of course it's at the wrong angle. So what we're going to do is go back into that edit menu. We're going to choose Free Transform. Ctrl T is the shortcut. There's the one I'm looking for, Free Transform, and a bounding box appears and I can move just outside of that box and I can rotate. So what we need to do now is to find a nice location where we think everything is butting up nicely for us. And when we're happy with that, we can hit the tick on the options bar. Now you'll notice once again that it's done a pretty good job. I think there's a little bit of ghosting down here, but almost nothing at all. If I wanted to do a little bit of work along the edge there, then what I would do is to place these two layers together, go to the top right of the layers palette, I'll choose Flatten Image, I'll come back and pick up the zoom tool and we'll zoom in just a little bit, and there you can see that little ghosting that we can see, maybe a little bit just there. So if I pick up my clone tool or even maybe the spot healing brush, let's see how the spot healing brush deals with this one at the edge here. Just going to wipe across that. Pretty good. How about that one? Not quite so good. I'll hit Ctrl Z and we'll have another go with a slightly smaller brush and we'll take it a little bit steadier. You can see that some of these tools in Photoshop do get so powerful that in the end we can be fooled into actually biting off more than we can chew. So anytime a tool doesn't work as you would expect, just take it a little bit slower and steadier and you'll probably find that it will. And while I'm here, I probably would try to deal with one or two other tiny distractions here that may be just detracting from the image. So with another couple of touches of the spot healing brush, I've removed those other little flaky parts from the branch the bird's sitting in, but I think we've achieved what we set out to achieve. We've taken an image which was basically a failure, despite the fact that it's pin sharp and has a beautiful background, and we've managed to salvage it with a simple copy and paste. At a recent demonstration, a member showed me this picture and asked if my copy and paste technique could remove the lit lamp from behind the guy's head. Well, yes it can, although it's a little bit more involved. We have to do this one stage at a time, and it wasn't best suited for a live demo. But in the interests of demonstrating the versatility of the technique, let me do this now. I'm going to start by zooming in to the background. The first thing we probably need to concentrate on is that player's advert in the background. We need to take one side of it, copy, paste and flip it to provide the other side. Sure, it's going to spoil the picture a little bit, but I think it's far enough in the background not to matter, and even if it did, we could just blur it a little more. So let's begin by making a selection. I'm going to use the Polygonal Lasso tool. It's grouped with the Lasso tool we used before. This is the one, Polygonal, because we've got some straight edges here and I think it's going to be better to make the selection. So I'm going to start down, well, let me start at the top right corner. I'm going to click, click and then move across to there. Moving down just above the top of that clock and across to the left. I want to try and take the shadow if I can and join up with the start. We need to soften the edge of that selection just a little bit. Select and mask will allow us to do that. 3 pixels, well, that looks okay to me, so I'll click OK, and then using that Control J shortcut key, look over on the right hand side and you can see the little patch that I've created. We're going to need to flip it, and my guess is rotate it too. So let's begin with the flip. We can go to the edit menu, we can go to transform and flip horizontal. I can pick up my move tool. You can see in fact I am going to need to flip this around or turn it around. So we can use the Control T or the free transform tool to do this, and I'll turn it. Now, how much of this are we going to use? Because we could get right across here and possibly do quite a bit of this, and let's take it to about that point there, and then when we copy some of this above we can bring that down to the edge. This little white area here, we can possibly just drop that in with one of the clone tools or the healing brushes. That doesn't look too bad to me, so I'm going to hit the tick on the options bar to commit that change. Just for a moment, and just for fun I suppose, let's hit Control 0 and see if we'd get away with that in the picture when it's complete. To be honest, I think we probably would. Okay, in that case then let's pick up the zoom tool and zoom back in and think about what we've got to do next. If we have any areas along the edge that we can see, we need to blend them in, either with a layer mask, or if you're not familiar with masks, then use the eraser tool. What I'm going to do here is to save this as a Photoshop file. Always a good job to do this, or it's a good practice to get into. Save each stage of a project, especially when you're new to Photoshop, because it gives you an opportunity, if you make a mistake, to drop back easily to a previously saved version. Now as you can see, I've zoomed in just a little bit here because the edge of the background advert is just encroaching on the guy's hair. If you're familiar with a layer mask, you can use one of those. I'm going to keep things simple and just select the eraser tool, drop the eraser size down. I just want to erase that edge away, just to the edge of the guy's hair, just so that it looks natural. Once I've done that, then I'm happy to flatten those two layers together, because I've just saved this as Antiques Man 2. So at the top right, I can choose Flatten, because what I want to do next is to do something with this little light area here. Now I think possibly the best way to do that is maybe to just take another quick patch. It may be the quickest way to do this. So let me just pick up my Lasso tool. If I just pick a patch there, feather the edge, select and mask, that looks good. Control J, and then with the move tool from the top of the toolbox, if I just drag that down, I think that's going to do the job. But once again, we've just got a little bit of erasing to do, just along the hair. Just take your time. Use a mask if you're familiar with a mask. And there we have it. And once again, simple change like that, I'm willing to flatten it. Little area there which might be a problem. So let's pick up our spot healing brush, make an appropriate size brush. We'll touch this just a few times just to see if we can merge that in a little bit better. And then take a look by just hitting Control 0. I think that's going to pass muster. So now we need to think about the lighter part just to the right of the player's advert. So I'm going to zoom in, but not quite so much this time, because we've got a problem here which we quite often have when we're using this technique. You'll notice that I probably need to take some of the corrugated iron behind this to make the next patch. But I've got what looks like nail marks or screw marks, and I've got this line running right through there. So what I'm going to do is eliminate those before I take some pixels from this location and drag them down. I'm going to do that by making a new blank layer over the top of the image. I'm going to select my spot healing brush, and I'm going to make sure from the top of the screen, the options, I've got the little box tick to sample all layers. What this means is I'm going to be fixing the problem on this image by a clone really, but I'm going to clone all the pixels onto a new blank layer. No risk whatsoever. Let me demonstrate how it works by going back to that wire there, and we'll just click and see how well the repair goes. Click, click. I'm just holding the shift key and I'm cloning here between two straight lines. It does a superb job. I hope you'll agree. I'll take off the little dot that is probably a nail or a fixing in the wall, and while I'm there I'll tidy up some of the others as well. But what I now need to do, before I move on of course, is to put these two together. So if you really wanted to keep saving a project as you go, now would be the time to save project 3. Always a good thing to do until you build up confidence, and then you'll find you'll do this less and less. Top right, flatten to move on. So now I need to take possibly the final patch. Let's hope that's going to be the case, but we'll see. Because we've got a bit of shading here, I'm not sure I want to take that. So I'm really looking at this area here. So I've got a small patch and I think it may not be big enough, but we have a plan. Let's pick up our Polygonal Lasso tool here. Going to draw down there, across to the edge of the jug, up and back. So there's the patch we're going to use. Let's soften it as we've done before and click OK, and before we do anything else, Control J to copy that to a new layer. Now I'm going to pick up my move tool from the top of the toolbox. Now we can move this into place. Now you can see the problem I have. That can go to about there, but I really got a little bit there that might be a problem, but I've got a little bit of a problem here. I think what I'm going to do is, I was trying to avoid using a mask here, but I think I may just use one. I'm going to put a mask on here. We do that from down the bottom left of the layers palette. If I spray black on the mask, which contains that patch, it's effectively the same as erasing pixels, but they're not entirely erased, they're just masked. So if I get it wrong, I can repair them. Let me demonstrate by going to my black as my foreground color, my brush tool, going to make my brush big, and I just want to brush between those two areas so that I make the join between the two more acceptable, and I think that's worked pretty well. But of course the problem we have is the patch I was able to take isn't quite big enough. So what I often do under those circumstances is I make a copy of this patch and extend it. Now I suppose we could do that just by using the free transform tool, but let me demonstrate this technique because I've had to use this a number of times. I'm going to drag this down over the copy icon at the bottom right, and now I've got two patches, and if I pick up my move tool I can bring this one down well over the hair, somewhere like that. Now all I need to do on the top one is to use my mask, black as my foreground color, use my brush, let me move the picture up. Now I can just mask this back very gently until I feel I've got a result. Now I'll make a deliberate mistake here. As you can see, I've gone back too far. And this is the beauty of using a mask. What I can do now is go back to my toolbox right down the bottom, and instead of selecting black as my foreground color, I'll select white. Now I can repair the little deliberate mistake that I made there, and hopefully we can produce an acceptable repair to the image in question. And once I've saved it once more, I can again flatten to finish the image, or to do any small changes that I think still remain. There are one or two. Let me pick up my spot healing brush. We've got a little highlight in the glass on the right, we'll remove that. Little area down at the left by the man's elbow, we'll remove that. And we've also got a little bit of a problem up here. We'll use the spot healing brush to remove that too. I'm doing this pretty quick and dirty, as you can see. Touch, 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 touch. But I think that's going to be good enough. If we zoom into the area we've been working in, there's only one area I think that I would like to just give a little touch to. I've got a little bit of a shading there. I don't think it's a big deal, and I know most people would never see it, but from time to time when we use these techniques, sometimes we can. So I'm just going to use my clone tool just above and just clone over that just to even it out just a little more. You can see where the clone source is coming from, and even maybe a little bit there. We can do anything we want just to make sure we have an acceptable result to finish. Now whenever we do work like this on an image, whether we do this consciously or subconsciously, I think most of us carry out what is called a cost-benefit analysis. What have I got to do? How much time is it going to take me to do it? And when I'm finished, is the image worthy of the time I've spent? But of course, once you get into these copy and paste techniques, you start to get faster and faster at doing them, and you get a little more efficient. So you tend then to have more opportunity to do the sort of repairs you've seen here and improve many of your images. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to learn more about Photoshop, check out my complete range of videos under the title of Photoshop for Photographers, and you'll find them at the address shown on screen. If you're watching this video on YouTube, check out the links below to our Photoshop for Photographers videos in the Show More section. What I've done with Photoshop for photographers is to lay out the videos in a logical learning order. So you can start the course and go as far along the videos as you wish. You choose the speed that suits you.